They think you need their approval. They think your self-worth depends on their validation. But here's the truth. Nothing destroys a narcissist more than realizing they can't control you anymore. And today, you'll learn exactly how to reclaim your power, not by stooping to their level, but by rising so far above it that they suffocate on their own ego. These aren't games. These are psychological awakenings. 7 ways not to become like them, but to outgrow them in a way that tortures their every insecurity. Ready? Narcissists are addicted to attention. Whether it's positive praise or negative conflict, what matters most to them is being the center of your emotional world. They don't care if you adore them or despise them. As long as your focus is on them, they win. That's the essence of their manipulation. They poke, provoke, flatter, insult, and charm in cycles, constantly keeping you engaged, constantly demanding a reaction. But the one thing they can't stand, the one thing they have no defense against is silence. When you go silent, when you no longer react, when you choose peace over participation, you shatter the illusion that they have power over you. Silence is not passive. It's one of the most aggressive forms of self-protection you can wield against a narcissist. It's not about ghosting or giving the cold shoulder out of pettiness. It's about reclaiming your power by refusing to let them dictate your energy. Narcissists count on your need to be heard, your desire to explain, to defend, to make them understand how they've hurt you. They want you to beg for clarity. They want you to scream for justice. Because all of that attention, even in anger, feeds them. It reinforces the false narrative in their mind that they still matter to you, that they still control the emotional weather in your life. When you stop feeding them with your reactions, you begin to starve their ego, and that's when their unraveling begins. They'll accuse you of being cruel, emotionally unavailable, or not mature enough to talk things out. But this isn't about emotional immaturity. This is about no longer playing a rigged game. Because with a narcissist, no conversation is ever truly about resolution. It's about manipulation. You walk into a discussion thinking it's two people trying to understand each other, but they walk in with one goal: to maintain control. Choosing silence is not avoiding confrontation. It's rising above the trap. It's stepping out of the drama and choosing clarity over chaos. It's refusing to be baited. A narcissist will use every tactic in their playbook when you go quiet. They may love bomb you, suddenly becoming sweet and apologetic. They may play the victim, acting like you're abandoning them, or they may turn to rage, trying to provoke you with insults or accusations. But if you stay centered, if you remain unshaken, they are left powerless because they can't manipulate someone who doesn't respond. Silence gives you space to heal. It disconnects you from their chaos and reconnects you with your own voice. In the quiet, you begin to hear your own thoughts again. You begin to feel your own emotions, unfiltered by their distortions. You remember who you were before the gaslighting, the guilt trips, the endless emotional roller coaster. Silence isn't just a weapon, it's a mirror. It shows you how much of your energy was being consumed by someone who didn't deserve access to you. And the narcissist feels it. They feel your silence like a slap because it forces them to confront a reality they've worked hard to avoid. They're not in control anymore. They can't make you dance. They can't make you cry. They can't make you stay. And that realization shakes them to their core. Narcissists need to believe they are irreplaceable, that you'll always come back, that you'll always need closure. But when your silence becomes your answer, it's a rejection louder than any words you could ever speak. Most people don't realize how deeply silence affects a narcissist. It hits them where it hurts most, in their ego. Your silence tells them that they no longer have emotional value in your life, that you've moved beyond their reach. And that, to a narcissist, is unbearable because without someone to control, without someone to mirror their self-importance back to them, they begin to collapse inward. Their grandiose mask starts to slip. Their insecurities start to surface. And they're forced to sit with the one person they've spent their entire life running from, themselves. That's the true power of silence. It doesn't just protect you, it forces them to face the void they've been hiding behind their false confidence. It shows them that you are not dependent on their approval, their presence, or their drama. You've chosen peace. You've chosen growth. You've chosen yourself. And in doing so, you've given them the one punishment they can't escape: irrelevant. Nothing wounds a narcissist more than seeing you succeed without them. Their entire identity is built on the illusion that you were beneath them, that your happiness, your growth, and your self-worth depended on their presence. They wanted to be the sun in your sky, the source of your light, the reason for your smile. When you were with them, they made you feel like without them, you would never thrive. That was the lie. And when you finally start to rebuild your life step by step and begin to shine in ways you never did before, that illusion crumbles. And it doesn't just crumble quietly. It shatters loud enough to echo in the narcissist's mind every time they see or hear about your progress. Living well isn't just healing. It's psychological warfare to someone who believed they broke you. Narcissists count on your collapse. They want to see you fall apart after them. In their minds, you were supposed to be lost, devastated, and stuck in regret. You were supposed to chase them, miss them, or at the very least remain emotionally tethered to them. So when you rise instead, when you start making moves, finding peace, rebuilding confidence, and creating joy without their input, it torments them. Not because they care about you, but because it proves they never had the power they thought they did. It reveals that their control was an illusion, that you were never broken, just wounded. And wounds, when treated with care, heal. The beauty of thriving without a narcissist is that you don't even need to announce it. The changes speak for themselves. Your energy shifts. You walk differently. You laugh differently. You no longer carry the weight of constant confusion or second guessing. You stop asking questions like, what did I do wrong? And start making declarations like, this is who I am now. You reclaim parts of yourself that were buried beneath manipulation and guilt. And all of this, every step forward, you do without ever having to say their name again. That silence, that strength eats at them. What truly tortures a narcissist is when your glow isn't tied to revenge. When you're not trying to prove them wrong, but simply becoming who you were always meant to be. It shows them that they weren't the fuel to your fire. They were the smoke clouding your vision. You didn't rise because of them. You rose in spite of them. That truth, unspoken but clear, is devastating to someone whose identity depends on being needed, wanted, or at least remembered. They will try to re-enter your life, sometimes subtly, sometimes dramatically, maybe with a fake apology, maybe with a "I've changed" message, or even by trying to sabotage your progress through mutual connections. Because seeing you do well without them isn't just painful, it's a threat to the persona they've built. If you're doing better, then maybe they were the problem all along, and that's a reality they're not ready to face. Your growth reflects their failure. Your happiness without them mirrors their irrelevance. Your peace reminds them that their chaos was optional and that you finally chose to walk away from it. And the best part, you don't need their validation anymore. You're no longer dependent on their praise or approval. You've detached, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. That's the kind of liberation that confuses and enrages a narcissist because it places them where they never imagined they'd be in your life, on the outside looking in. Thriving means surrounding yourself with people who uplift rather than drain you. It means discovering talents and passions that were silenced while you were walking on eggshells. It means waking up without anxiety, going to sleep without replaying arguments in your head, and spending your days building a future that feels right, not one that you were forced to settle for. And the more you evolve, the more you detach from the version of yourself that tolerated mistreatment. That's not someone you identify with anymore. And the narcissists, they can't reach the new version of you. They don't have access to this level of you. And that's what eats at them the most. You're no longer the person they knew, no longer desperate, no longer confused, no longer under their spell. You've rebuilt from the rubble they thought you'd stay buried in. And each accomplishment, each peaceful day, each smile on your face is a reminder that they lost something they never truly valued. Someone strong, resilient, and capable of rising without needing them as a crutch. A narcissist thrives in environments where they can control the narrative, manipulate perceptions, and play people against each other. One of their most powerful tools is the use of flying monkeys, individuals they enlist to do their bidding, defend their image, and relay information back to them. These people may be friends, family members, co-workers, or even mutual acquaintances. To a narcissist, they're pawns, and the more of them they have, the stronger their illusion of power appears. But when you begin to remove their audience, to cut off their access to your life and stop participating in their staged drama, their influence begins to shrink and they begin to panic. Narcissists hate being exposed, but what they fear even more is being irrelevant. Their entire persona is built on image, how others see them, what others think about them, and how much admiration they can extract from those around them. So when you take away their platform, when you no longer react, respond, or allow their voice to echo in your circle, you rob them of their primary source of supply, attention. Without that supply, their mask starts to crack. They love triangulation. They'll tell one person one version of the story and tell another something completely different, often painting themselves as the victim and you as the unstable one. They want people around you to question your decisions, doubt your character, or even try to convince you to go back to the narcissist. But once you begin to step away and refuse to engage with those enablers, the narcissist loses control of the storyline. You stop feeding the system, you stop allowing them to weaponize others against you, and that's when their influence starts to collapse. Taking away their audience doesn't always mean cutting off everyone overnight. It starts with clarity. You begin to see who's really neutral and who's unknowingly carrying messages for the narcissist. You become aware of conversations that feel more like interrogations. You notice who keeps bringing up the narcissist's name, who defends them, who downplays your pain. These people might not mean harm, but they're still playing a part in the narcissist's game. And removing access doesn't require drama, it requires boundaries. When the narcissist realizes that you've closed the information pipeline, they panic. They start asking others about you. They may send people to check on you or act as if they're concerned. But it's not about you, it's about regaining access to your life. They want to know how you're doing, who you're seeing, if you're still thinking about them, and most importantly, if you're still emotionally tied to them. Your silence and distance leave them guessing. And for someone who craves control, that uncertainty is unbearable. You begin to dismantle their power when you stop justifying yourself. You stop explaining your side of the story. You stop correcting the lies they spread. That's one of the hardest things to do, remaining silent while your name is being twisted. But the moment you stop defending yourself to people who were never willing to understand you in the first place, you reclaim your energy. You let time, truth, and consistency be your defender. And over time, people begin to see through the act. They notice the patterns. They watch the narcissist jump from victim to villain, depending on who's in the room. And eventually, the false image they work so hard to uphold begins to crack. One of the most painful parts of this process is realizing how many people were never truly on your side. People you trusted, people you opened up to, people you believed would understand. But in letting them go, you make space for something far more powerful, authenticity. Your circle may grow smaller, but it becomes stronger. You start surrounding yourself with people who see you clearly, who believe in your truth without needing a long explanation, who don't require proof to validate your pain. And those people, they aren't impressed by the narcissist's charm or fooled by their charisma. They see through the performance. The narcissist hates losing their audience because it means they can no longer shape how others see you. They can no longer paint themselves as the savior or martyr. They can no longer twist the truth to gain sympathy or admiration. And when they realize they've lost that control, they often spiral. They become more desperate, more erratic, more aggressive in their attempts to regain your attention. They may lash out, smear your name even further, or try to guilt you into reconnecting. But all of it is noise. All of it is designed to distract you from the fact that you've taken your power back. Every connection you cut that once tied you to their world is another thread of control being severed. And eventually, there's nothing left for them to pull. No one left to manipulate on your behalf. No one willing to carry their lies. And in that space, they're left alone with the truth they tried to avoid, that without an audience, they're just another person screaming into the void. Narcissists build their identity on a fragile house of cards, constantly needing to be seen as superior, flawless, and irreplaceable. They cannot stand criticism, accountability, or anything that pokes a hole in the perfect image they've constructed. They thrive when people tiptoe around them, sugarcoat truths, and validate their inflated sense of self. That's why standing firm and asserting your boundaries without fear of confrontation or guilt drives them absolutely crazy. When you set a clear line they can't cross, and more importantly, when you enforce it, they experience a loss of control that feels like rejection and humiliation. To a narcissist, your boundaries are not just personal decisions. They are a direct challenge to their illusion of dominance. For someone used to manipulating others through charm, guilt, or fear, your boundaries act like an impenetrable wall. Narcissists expect you to bend, to apologize, to over-explain your choices. They expect you to second-guess yourself when they react with anger or tears. But when you calmly hold your ground, refuse to explain yourself beyond what's necessary, and stay consistent, you remove their ability to emotionally sway you. They start to see that the tools they once used to control you, manipulation, blame shifting, gaslighting, no longer work. And when their usual tactics fail, they feel exposed, like a magician whose tricks no longer amaze the crowd. What disturbs them most about your boundaries is that it reflects emotional independence. It shows you're not afraid of them anymore. You're not seeking their validation, nor are you trying to fix or rescue them. You're simply honoring your truth. That is unbearable for a narcissist who believes relationships are transactional. In their mind, they give approval or affection only when it serves their purpose, and they expect complete emotional obedience in return. But when you disrupt that unspoken contract, when you show them that peace matters more than proximity, that self-respect matters more than their approval, they panic. Because for the first time, they are no longer the one in control. Narcissists are wired to test limits. The moment you set a boundary, they will try to cross it, either directly through confrontation or indirectly through subtle manipulation. They might guilt you with lines like "you've changed" or "you're being too sensitive." They might try to make you feel cruel for enforcing space, claiming you're abandoning or hurting them. But these aren't genuine expressions of hurt. They're tactics designed to make you doubt your stance. They want you to question your right to say no. They want you to feel responsible for their discomfort. But when you stop taking that emotional bait and stay firm without emotional over-explaining, they begin to lose grip on their power. The strength of your boundary lies not in how loudly you state it, but in how consistently you uphold it. Narcissists don't believe what you say, they believe what you tolerate. If you say, "I won't tolerate disrespect," but then continue engaging after they insult you, they won't take your words serious. But when you calmly disengage the moment they cross a line, when you walk away without raising your voice, when you block access after repeated disrespect, they begin to understand that you're no longer playing the same game. And that realization is infuriating to them because it forces them to see you as someone who can't be controlled. Holding boundaries doesn't mean you become cold or aggressive. In fact, the more calm and grounded you are, the more powerful your boundary becomes. It's about protecting your emotional space, not punishing them. It's about reclaiming your right to say, "This doesn't work for me," without needing their permission. It's about letting them deal with the consequences of their behavior instead of cushioning them from it. Narcissists hate this because they're used to being protected from the fallout of their own actions. They want someone else to absorb the blame, the discomfort, the guilt. But when you stop carrying their emotional weight, they are left to face the truth of themselves. And that's something they've spent their entire lives avoiding. When you stand firm, you begin to disrupt their entire strategy. They don't know how to navigate someone they can't guilt, someone who isn't afraid of silence, someone who doesn't collapse under pressure. You become unpredictable in the best way. You don't respond on cue anymore. They can no longer press the same emotional buttons and expect the same reaction. And in that disruption, they begin to unravel because everything about a narcissist is reactive. They are constantly adjusting their behavior to get a response from you. When you stop giving that response, they don't know what to do. That's why boundaries aren't just personal. They are transformational. They don't just protect you. They expose the narcissist. They reveal how entitled, controlling, and insecure they truly are. And they force the narcissist to either change their behavior or lose access to you completely. And because most narcissists are unwilling to change, they usually choose to rage, smear, or withdraw. But none of that matters anymore because your peace is no longer negotiable. You've stopped trading your sanity for temporary harmony. You've chosen to protect yourself, even if it makes them uncomfortable. The narcissists operate in a world where appearances mean everything. They rely heavily on convincing others that they are powerful, desirable, and in control. They construct a persona that looks confident on the outside, but is built on insecurity, fear of abandonment, and an intense need to be admired. What truly tortures them is when the person they thought they broke, the person they expected to fall apart without them, rises stronger, calmer, and more successful. Your glow up, not fueled by revenge, but by healing, growth, and focus, becomes a mirror they cannot avoid, a reflection that exposes their weakness, their failure to destroy you, and most painfully, their lack of significance in your life. There's nothing more threatening to a narcissist than watching someone they once controlled, manipulated, or devalued become unfazed by them. When you begin to succeed without seeking their attention or validation, it shatters their illusion of importance. You're not crying, not calling, not trying to get them to notice you. You're thriving and they can't stand it. Your progress becomes a quiet declaration that they are not your source of strength, happiness, or worth. And that alone dismantles the entire narrative they built about you being weak, dependent, or incapable without their presence. Narcissists are obsessed with image, not just their own, but also the stories they've told others about you. They often smear your name after the relationship ends, painting themselves as the one who tried everything while you were the unstable or selfish one. They want to be seen as the hero or the victim, never the villain. So when others see you flourishing, speaking confidently, setting boundaries, or pursuing your goals unapologetically, it contradicts everything the narcissist said. It raises questions. People begin to wonder if the narcissist lied. People start seeing the cracks in their mask. And to someone who desperately needs others to believe in their facade, that public exposure is unbearable. Your glow up also challenges their ego in a more personal way. Narcissists believe that they are the best thing that ever happened to you. In their mind, no one else could ever love you like they did. No one else could ever want you after them. And you would eventually come crawling back once you realized what you lost. But when you don't come back, when you instead focus inward and begin building a life that's peaceful, passionate, and full of purpose, it shakes them at their core. It tells them, without a word, that they were never as special as they believed, that you're capable of joy and progress without them, and that truth is something their fragile ego can't digest. The most powerful part of your healing journey is that it's not about them. It's about you. You're no longer living in reaction to their behavior. You're not dressing better just to show them what they missed or working harder just to prove a point. You're doing it because you value yourself now, because you've reclaimed your energy, your time, and your mind. That's the kind of progress a narcissist cannot copy. And that's what infuriates them. They can imitate confidence, success, or happiness on the surface, but they can't manufacture genuine peace or emotional freedom. And that's what you now embody. They stalk your social media, ask mutual acquaintances about you, try to insert themselves into your orbit just to see if they still affect you. They send cryptic messages or fake concern, not because they care, but because they need to know, are you still theirs? Do you still feel something? Do they still have power? But your indifference, true silent indifference, is the clearest sign that their chapter in your life is over. You're not bitter. You're not angry. You're just done. That calm detachment is what eats them alive, because narcissists expect chaos. They expect you to react. And when you don't, when you respond with peace, it exposes their irrelevance. Glow up also becomes a beacon to others, especially those who may still be entangled in the narcissist's web. Your strength, your story, your evolution serve as a silent testimony that survival is possible, that healing is real, and that freedom is worth fighting for. And that kind of influence is what narcissists fear most, because it means they're not just losing control over you, they're losing control over the narrative. You're no longer their story to tell. You've become the author of your own life. What really tortures the narcissist is that the glow up is permanent. It's not a temporary phase. It's not a mask. It's not a game. It's you finally becoming who you were always meant to be before they tried to dim your light. They realize that their presence is no longer required, their validation no longer needed, and no matter how much they posture, try to slander your name, or replicate your strength through imitation, they can't touch what they didn't help build. Your growth becomes untouchable because you built it in the dark. You built it when no one was watching, and now that it's shining, they're forced to watch from the shadows, powerless to dim a light that no longer belongs to them. Narcissists have a deep and relentless need to be at the center of attention, not just in a superficial way, but in a way that feeds their fragile sense of superiority and control. They want to be the person everyone talks about, the one others admire, fear, or feel drawn to. They construct elaborate facades to portray themselves as important, desirable, and indispensable. What they can't stand, what truly tortures them, is being ignored. Silence is not just absence to them, it's a brutal mirror reflecting their lack of power. When you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop fighting, and simply remove your emotional energy from the equation, you dismantle their entire illusion of control. It is the most powerful weapon you can wield against a narcissist: indifference. Narcissists rely on your emotional reactions, whether it's anger, tears, defensiveness, or confusion. Any response means they still have access to your mind. Your reactions are their fuel. They provoke you just to feel powerful. They create drama because it keeps you emotionally entangled. They manipulate you to get you back into the cycle of explaining yourself, justifying your boundaries, or trying to fix what they keep breaking. But when you give them nothing, no words, no reactions, no attention, it starves them. Silence becomes a deafening blow to their ego because it communicates something they can't argue with, that they no longer matter in your world. This kind of silence is not passive, it's intentional. It's the result of emotional clarity. You've realized that you no longer owe them explanations, that your peace is too valuable to be traded for pointless conversations, circular arguments, or empty apologies. Narcissists thrive in confusion. They want you second-guessing yourself, analyzing every word, questioning your decisions. But when you choose silence, you're saying, I'm no longer available for manipulation. And that boundary, enforced without rage or drama, is more infuriating to them than any insult you could ever throw. They will try to break the silence. They'll send bait texts, pretending to care, fake apologies, or even sudden emergencies designed to get your attention. If that doesn't work, they may escalate, trying to provoke you with insults, guilt-tripping, or involving others to reach you. All of this is a desperate attempt to reestablish the control they lost. Narcissists are terrified of losing control because when they can't manage how you see them, how others see them, or how you feel about them, their entire false identity starts to collapse. Your silence forces them to sit in that collapse. It forces them to deal with the consequences of their own behavior without the distraction of your energy. Being ignored by someone they once had emotional power over is a unique kind of torment for a narcissist. It's not just that they miss your presence, they miss being able to manipulate your presence. They miss being able to push your buttons and pull you back into their orbit whenever they felt bored, insecure, or threatened. Your silence is the proof that you've evolved beyond their reach. that they no longer hold a position in your life, and the realization that they've lost their grip on you, not because someone took you away, but because you chose yourself, is the kind of rejection their ego cannot process. What makes this even more unbearable is that narcissists don't view relationships the way emotionally healthy people do. To them, people are objects to use, sources of attention, admiration, or emotional supply. So when you go silent, they don't just feel rejected, they feel discarded. And that feeling discarded is what they usually try to inflict on others. They ghost people, ignore messages, withhold affection, all as tactics to make others feel small and desperate. But when those same tactics are used on them, not from a place of manipulation, but from true detachment, it sends them into a psychological tailspin. This is why no contact or low contact is so effective. It sends a clear nonverbal message. You no longer have access to me. That kind of emotional closure without confrontation is what they fear most, because they can argue with your words, twist your statements, and shift blame during an argument. But they can't argue with silence. They can't twist it, attack it, or manipulate it. It's a boundary they can't breach because it offers no door to knock on. And that realization that their access has been permanently revoked is the one thing they cannot control or change, no matter how hard they try. Silence also removes the opportunity for the narcissist to rewrite the story. As long as you're speaking, they can misquote you, play victim, or claim you were unstable. But when you stop engaging entirely, the narrative is no longer theirs to twist. People begin to wonder why you're so calm, so distant, so quiet. And the narcissist's attempts to provoke or smear you begin to look like what they are, desperate and hollow. Your silence exposes their noise. Your peace exposes their chaos, and your indifference exposes how little they actually mattered in the long run. The greatest punishment for a narcissist is not rage, revenge, or public exposure. It's your silence. It's the calm, quiet, dignified removal of your presence from their life, because that's the one thing they never expected. They thought you'd always come back, always argue, always try, but you didn't. You chose peace. And now they're left in the void they created, screaming into a silence that doesn't answer back. Narcissists pride themselves on being unreadable, untouchable, and in control of every room they walk into. Their entire personality is a performance, a carefully curated image of confidence, power, and superiority. But behind that performance is an unstable, insecure identity, desperately craving validation and terrified of being exposed. What deeply tortures a narcissist is when someone sees through their mask and treats them as ordinary, unimpressive, and completely transparent. When you stop reacting to their charm, when you stop being awed by their status, appearance, or manipulation tactics, you rip away the illusion they rely on to feel superior. And the more calmly and confidently you expose their patterns without drama, without fear, and without need, the more fragile they become. Narcissists function on control, and a large part of that control comes from keeping others confused, emotionally dependent, or unsure of their worth. They use gaslighting to distort reality, triangulation to breed jealousy, and love bombing to create addiction. All of it is smoke and mirrors designed to prevent you from seeing who they really are. So when you begin to recognize the patterns, speak the truth, and call things what they are, you become their worst nightmare. Not because you attack them, but because you no longer believe in the show. You're not scared, you're not confused, you're simply awake. That level of clarity burns through the fantasy they've constructed, and they panic because once someone sees the truth, they can't unsee it. Losing a narcissist doesn't require shouting or confrontation. It's often most effective when done through quiet awareness and confident detachment. You see the manipulation, but you don't react. You recognize the lies, but you don't argue. You understand the games, but you don't play. That's the exposure they hate the most, the kind that doesn't turn into a scene, but instead leaves them standing alone in their false image while others begin to notice the crack. Narcissists depend on others not noticing. They assume that their charm or intimidation will be enough to blind people. But when you calmly describe their behavior without anger, when you mirror back their inconsistencies with facts, and when you remove yourself with self-respect, you create a spotlight they can't escape from. The fear of exposure is rooted in the narcissist's fear of being irrelevant. They don't want you to just leave. They want you to leave feeling broken, lost, or obsessed with them. They want your world to stop so they can feel like they were the sun in your sky. But when you walk away in full awareness, with your self-worth intact and your peace untouched, you deny them that power. You don't just survive, you understand. And that understanding makes you immune. Narcissists can't stand when you're immune to them. It means they no longer have leverage. It means their tools don't work. It means you're out of the fog they tried to keep you in. Even more painful for the narcissist is when others begin to see what you see. When you start speaking truthfully, not with bitterness, but with clarity, others listen. When you share your story or your insight, others start connecting the dots. The narcissist begins to lose their grip on the narrative, and nothing is more damaging to their false identity than being exposed in front of others. They might call you crazy, bitter, or obsessed, but if you remain composed and grounded, their words start to look like projection. Their accusations begin to feel desperate, and that desperation makes them look exactly like the person they try so hard to convince others they're not. What truly tortures the narcissist is not just being seen, it's being seen by someone they couldn't manipulate. When they realize that their usual tricks, praise, guilt, rage, seduction, don't work on you anymore, they're forced to confront their own powerlessness. You weren't a puppet, you weren't weak, you simply believed in someone who wasn't real. But now you know better, and knowledge is something they can't take from you. That knowledge changes everything. It shifts the dynamic permanently. It means you can't be lured back in because the illusion is broken, and it's that break, the irreversible awareness, that haunts them. They may try to reinvent themselves, find new targets, or smear your name to regain a sense of control. But deep down, they know the truth. You saw them. You saw behind the smile, the charm, the blame shifting, and the victim playing. You saw the scared, insecure person hiding behind a mask of confidence. And the most painful part, you didn't hate them. You didn't even need revenge. You just chose to walk away, not because you were weak, but because you were strong enough to stop dancing with a lie. You exposed them by refusing to be part of their story anymore. The longer you stay grounded in your truth, the more you heal, the more others begin to wake up too. Your ability to speak clearly about what happened becomes a guiding light for people still trapped in their confusion. And in doing so, you don't just protect yourself, you dismantle the narcissist's ability to harm others in the same way. That kind of exposure goes beyond one relationship. It ripples outward. And the narcissist, who once felt powerful through deception, is left trying to put back on a mask that no longer fits in a world that's beginning to see too clearly. You don't torture a narcissist by sinking to their level. You do it by rising so high that they can't reach you. You do it by healing, by building, by choosing peace over war and growth over revenge. These 7 ways aren't about becoming bitter. They're about becoming better, not for them, but for you, because your greatest revenge is always your transformation.